Hydration drink mixes are a great way not only to take in electrolytes, but also calories while on the run, either in addition to or even instead of things like bars and gels. These are available from a number of brands, in a number of flavors, and with a wide range of ingredients and concentrations, some with only electrolytes, others with carbohydrates, and some even with protein and amino acids. But while there are some obvious benefits to these powdered drink mixes, there are also some potential drawbacks. And I've talked about my nutrition strategy quite a bit in the past, and I wouldn't say that my views on these drink mixes has changed too much over the years, but my views have sort of crystallized. Excuse the pun. Drink mixes are probably the easiest way to take in both electrolytes and calories during a training run or a race without having to remember to eat. That's because you're likely going to be drinking a lot anyway, so it can make it easy to ingest a couple of hundred calories an hour without even thinking about it. So it may be tempting to rely primarily on drink mixes for both your electrolytes and your caloric intake. But what if you're running a cool weather race and you end up falling behind on your hydration? Well, then you're going to fall behind on your nutrition as well. This is less of an issue if you're only relying on drink mixes for electrolytes. And of course, many products like bars and gels have electrolytes as well. But what about during a really hot weather race where you may end up drinking a lot more than you had originally planned? Now you may end up guzzling all of your pre-mixed hydration drink, taking in more calories in a shorter period of time, and leaving you without enough for the rest, and likely not enough electrolytes for the rest of the water that you might end up drinking as well. And during a race, if you've planned and trained your stomach for powders, it can be a risk to suddenly now have to rely on aid stations instead, and to be taking in other foods that you maybe haven't tested. Worst yet, you may end up feeling like you need to ration your fluid intake so as not to consume too many calories from your drink, but that could leave you severely dehydrated. Now, electrolyte tablets I find are a much easier thing to manage in these situations when you're running in hot environments, either in combination with drink mixes or just on their own. It's easy to carry a small bag of these, if only for emergencies, and then to pop one or two maybe for every liter or two of water that you might pull from a stream or drink in an aid station. So it takes some of the heavy lifting away from your hydration mix, and it leaves you with a little bit more flexibility. I'll often carry spare drink mix in pre-portioned baggies, which I can then mix with water whenever I refill my flasks. And you can also buy pre-packaged individual servings from most brands. But these do take a minute to mix up, and they can get messy. It's definitely not something that you can do while on the run, so you'll want to factor in this time at aid stations. Now, something that does help is to use flasks or bottles with a wider mouth. Or better yet, if you happen to have crew during a race, or even just if you have access to a drop bag, you can pre-fill spare flasks and ideally pre-mix your powders with water so that they're nicely dissolved and ready to go when you need them. Now, powders can also lead to flavor fatigue. It's one thing to be drinking the same thing for a few hours on a training run, but it's entirely a different thing altogether on something like a multi-day event, trying to drink or eat even the same thing for days at a time. You could, of course, try to use a variety of flavors, which might help, and always try to experiment with any products in a variety of environments and conditions, because something that tastes great in colder weather could make your stomach turn in hot climates. Now, having said all of that, powders can be an absolute lifesaver when your stomach turns and when you can't get down any solid foods, particularly something like this hydration sports mix from Skratch Labs, which is quite high in both carbohydrates and sodium, but very easy on the gut, thanks to how slowly it's designed to break down when digested. I relied on Skratch for my multi-day stage race in Georgia a couple years ago after seeing how well this worked for a few of the lead athletes in Namibia the year prior, not only for my electrolytes, but as my primary source of calories throughout the race each day. But the key at those events is that the aid stations were very evenly spaced out, about 10 kilometers apart, which would take me about an hour to cover pretty consistently. This meant that I could very reliably plan and ration both my fluid and caloric intake. And I was using larger 800 ml bottles from Raidlight since I was required to have capacity for at least 1.5 liters. And those were much easier to refill with powder from my pre-portioned little baggies at each aid station. But the main reason that I used powdered drink mixes as my primary fuel source in that race was because we had to carry all of our gear and nutrition for the entire week on our backs. And it doesn't get any lighter than powders. Another product that you've seen me use quite a bit in recent years is the Ultra Energy Drink Mix from NAC, which in addition to carbohydrates includes protein and amino acids, which is really important for longer events. I used this during UTMB, during the Bob Graham Round, during the Pyrenees Stage Run, and of course it was perfect for the Moab 240. But in all of those cases, I was using it as a supplement while still consuming other types of run nutrition, like bars and waffles, along with solid foods, of course, from the aid stations. And by the way, while this video is not sponsored, NAC has sponsored some of my other projects in the past, including those ones that I mentioned. And this, I would argue, is the best way to rely on these drink mixes, not as your primary source of fuel, but as a supplement. Because as I said, it's essentially like bonus calories, since you're drinking anyway. But in this way, you're going to avoid many of those potential drawbacks. My favorite approach is to use drink mixes in one flask and plain water in the other, which helps to avoid the risk of flavor fatigue. And if you're especially thirsty, you can then just keep refilling the flask with water and then supplement that with electrolyte pills, provided, like me, you're in the habit of carrying a little baggie full in case of emergencies. Relying only on drink mix, like I did in Georgia, for example, is something that I think only the most experienced athletes who have their nutrition completely dialed in should ever attempt. And I tested that strategy extensively during my training, and I've got a really solid stomach to begin with. But as I said, I had very specific splits that I was aiming for in that race, which often is not the case when running more mountainous events. And if weight wasn't such a concern, then I almost certainly would have combined this with waffles and gels. Ultra running, as we like to say, it's somewhat of an eating contest. But just remember that every athlete and every event is a little bit different, and you need to be able to adapt and to give yourself options on the day. And drink mixes are just one great option to consider.